Most people believe memory is the first thing to go. They expect forgotten names, misplaced keys, moments that feel embarrassing but harmless. But what if the brain begins changing long before memory ever fails? What if the earliest loss is not forgetting information but losing efficiency? Before memory declines, the brain becomes slower at selecting what matters, filtering noise, coordinating timing, and allocating energy. The system still works, but it works less elegantly. For years, nothing feels wrong. You can still remember facts, stories, faces, and routines. Yet tasks require more effort. Decisions feel heavier. Attention drains faster, and mental fatigue arrives earlier than it once did. This is not memory loss. This is efficiency loss. And for many adults, this shift begins quietly in midlife, often decades before any diagnosis, before concern, before awareness. Today, we are not talking about dementia. We are talking about the stage before it ever becomes visible. The human brain did not evolve to store memories. It evolved to predict, prioritize, and act under uncertainty. Memory is a tool, not the mission. Efficiency is the mission. Every second, the brain receives massive sensory input, far more than it can consciously process. To survive, it must filter aggressively, compress information, and route energy only where it is needed. When the brain is young, this system is fast and flexible. Neural networks communicate with minimal delay. Signals arrive on time. Inhibition works cleanly. Noise is suppressed automatically. As we age, these systems do not shut down. They drift. The brain still remembers, but it expends more energy to do so. The cost per thought increases. This is why older adults often report feeling mentally tired rather than forgetful. The data is still there, but accessing it requires more effort than before. Neuroscience consistently shows that processing speed declines earlier than memory accuracy. Reaction time slows, mental switching takes longer, multitasking becomes inefficient. Importantly, this is not due to neuron death alone. It is largely a systems-level change. White matter pathways degrade subtly with age. Myelin thins. Signal timing becomes less synchronized. The brain depends on precise timing. When signals arrive milliseconds late, networks lose efficiency even if the information is correct. Imagine an orchestra where every musician still knows the music, but the conductor's timing is slightly off. The performance suffers not because of missing notes, but because of coordination. This is what early cognitive aging looks like. Executive function governs how attention is directed, how decisions are made, how priorities are set, and how mistakes are corrected in real time. These control systems rely heavily on frontal brain networks that demand high energy and precise coordination, which makes them especially sensitive to aging. Long before memory itself begins to weaken, the brain becomes less efficient at filtering distraction. Irrelevant thoughts intrude more easily, mental clutter builds, and focus requires conscious effort rather than instinct. This is why many older adults describe feeling overwhelmed rather than forgetful. The information has not disappeared. What has changed is the brain's ability to manage, organize, and suppress competing signals efficiently. This distinction is critical because it reshapes how we understand cognitive aging, not as sudden loss, but as gradual decline in control. The human brain consumes nearly 20% of the body's total energy, which means efficiency is not a preference, but a requirement for normal function. As the brain ages, cerebral glucose metabolism gradually declines, mitochondria generate energy with less precision, and inflammatory signaling raises background noise across neural networks. To maintain performance, the brain compensates by recruiting additional circuits to handle tasks that once required far fewer resources. This adaptive strategy can sustain function for years, sometimes even decades. But compensation is never free. Mental fatigue appears sooner, cognitive flexibility narrows, and recovery after sustained effort takes longer than it once did. This is why extended conversations, complex environments, and prolonged focus begin to feel demanding with age, even when memory itself remains largely intact. When cognitive efficiency declines beyond a certain threshold, memory performance finally begins to show visible strain. This does not occur because memories have vanished, but because the systems responsible for retrieving them become less reliable over time. The information still exists within the brain. What deteriorates is the pathway that allows access to it. This is why early memory complaints are often uneven and confusing. On some days, everything feels clear and familiar, while on others, the same information feels temporarily out of reach. Such fluctuation reflects instability in the system rather than true memory loss. Recognizing this difference is essential because it reframes cognitive aging not as simple damage, but as adaptation under increasing biological constraints. Popular culture often treats memory like a storage device, as if the mind were a hard drive where losing data means losing the self. This framing is emotionally powerful, but scientifically misleading. Modern neuroscience tells a quieter and more complex story. Cognitive aging is not a sudden drop or a dramatic cliff. It is a long, gradual slope shaped by subtle changes in efficiency, timing, and control. Most adults are already moving along this slope without realizing it. They are not broken or failing. They are adapting to biological constraints that evolve slowly over time. The real danger lies not in these changes themselves, but in misunderstanding them and ignoring the signals the brain is quietly sending. Brain efficiency depends on the steady delivery of energy, the stability of metabolic signaling, the structure of sleep, and the level of meaningful cognitive challenge. Brains age fastest when blood flow becomes compromised, energy delivery falters, and inflammatory processes raise background noise across neural networks. Movement, novelty, social interaction, and structured thinking help preserve the quality of neural signaling. They do not work by creating large numbers of new neurons. They work by protecting timing, inhibition, and coordination, the invisible mechanics that keep brain networks efficient. The objective is not to preserve memory at any cost. The true goal is to preserve efficiency, because when efficiency remains intact, memory often follows. If we stop thinking about aging as simple loss and begin seeing it as a reduction in margin, our entire understanding changes. The brain does not suddenly fail. It becomes less tolerant of stress, noise, and overload that it once absorbed effortlessly. What used to feel automatic now requires intention, pacing, and structure. This shift is often misread as decline, but it is neither weakness nor defect. It is physics. Biological systems operating with narrower margins demand greater precision, and systems governed by physics respond predictably to structure, rhythm, and respect for limits, not denial or force. The brain does not suddenly forget who you are. It gradually asks for more care, more rhythm, and more respect for its limits as time passes. Long before memory ever fades, efficiency tells the story quietly and consistently. Attention costs more, recovery takes longer, and clarity depends increasingly on structure rather than effort alone. If this perspective resonates with you, or brings to mind someone in your family, consider how small changes in daily rhythm can preserve mental clarity longer than we often expect. If this film helped you see cognitive aging differently, please take a moment to like it and subscribe for more science-based documentaries on how the human body truly works. And in the comments, share your own experiences or stories from parents, grandparents, or yourself. These quiet transitions deserve understanding, not fear.